This is a study that was published out of the University of Houston examining what I would call a micro exercise or a micro movement. It's a very small movement of a very small portion of your body, in fact, just 1% of your musculature, that when it's performed continuously while seated has, at least what they report, are very dramatic positive changes in terms of blood sugar utilization and metabolism. So the title of this study is A Potent Physiological Method to Magnify and Sustain Soleus Oxidative Metabolism Improves Glucose and Lipid Regulation. First of all, you have a muscle called the soleus. The soleus muscle is a more or less wide, flat muscle that sits beneath what most people think of as their calf, although it's part of the calf muscle. The other portion of the calf is called the gastrocnemius. The soleus sits below that. Now, the soleus muscle is a unique muscle because it's largely slow twitch muscle fibers. It's designed to be used continuously over and over again for stabilizing your body when you're standing upright, for walking. This is a muscle that's designed to contract over and over and over again. In fact, you could walk all day on this muscle and most likely it would not get sore. And you've probably done that and it did not get sore. In contrast, a muscle like your bicep or your tricep, if I were to have you perform hundreds or thousands of repetitions, even with a very light weight, 1 pound weight or a 2 pound weight, eventually it would fatigue. You would feel a sort of a burn there. It's a very unusual set of muscles to use repeatedly. But the soleus is an unusual muscle in that it really is designed to be used continuously. Now, this study was focused on how people who sit a lot of the day and don't have the opportunity for a lot of physical movement, or maybe who don't even exercise at all, can improve their metabolism and glucose utilization. Anytime you eat, your blood sugar goes up to some extent. So your blood glucose, as it's called, goes up to some extent. And then insulin is a hormone that's used to essentially chaperone and sequester and use that blood glucose. Or basically the idea is you don't want blood glucose to go too high. Hyperinsulinemia is something associated with blood glucose that's too high because insulin goes up to essentially match the level of blood glucose. You also don't want to be hypoglycemic. You don't want to have blood sugar that's too low. And insulin is involved in both regulating peaks and troughs in blood sugar, blood glucose. So we can basically say, and this is very simple, but we can basically say that you don't want blood glucose to be elevated too much or for too long. That's not good. In fact, people who have diabetes, because they don't make insulin, their blood glucose is so high that they actually have to take insulin in order to regulate it. Otherwise, their blood glucose can go so high that it can damage cells and damage organs. It can even kill people. People who have type 2 diabetes are so-called insulin insensitive. They make insulin, but the receptors to insulin are not sensitive to it. And so they make more insulin than normally would be made, and blood glucose isn't regulated properly, et cetera, et cetera. The take-home message about blood glucose is that you want your blood glucose levels to go up when you eat, but not too high, and you don't want them to stay elevated for too long. This study looked at how people who are largely sedentary, or at least sitting, can increase the utilization, the clearance of glucose from the bloodstream after eating. And they also looked at overall metabolism for people that were using just that 1% of muscle, the soleus, by doing what they call a Soleus Pushup. So the Soleus Pushup can be described very simply as if you're sitting down with your knee bent at an approximately right angle, like a square corner, and pushing up, or I should say lifting your heel while pushing down on your toe and contracting the calf muscle, as it were, and then lowering the heel, and then lifting that heel again, lowering the heel, lifting the heel again. Each one of those is what they call a Soleus Pushup. This study had people continuously do Soleus Pushups, and they looked at things like blood glucose utilization, they looked at metabolism, and so on. First of all, they used an equal number of male and female subjects. There were a wide range of body mass indices. Okay, so this wasn't just super fit people or people that were purely sedentary and not fit. They used a wide variety of ages, time of day, people who tended to walk a lot or not walk a lot. They measured changes in metabolism and blood glucose utilization in people that had done these Soleus Pushups while seated in the laboratory. And I must say they had them do these Soleus Pushups for quite a long while, continuously. So they had them do it for as long as 270 minutes total throughout the day. So if you divide that, that's 4.5 hours. You might say, well, 4.5 hours of lifting the heel and putting the heel down, lifting the heel, putting the heel down. That's a lot. But they didn't always do it continuously. They had some breaks in there. So this is the sort of thing that you could imagine you or other people could do while seated, while doing Zooms or while on calls, or maybe even while eating, doing that sort of thing. Although I'm not suggesting that you constantly be focusing on Soleus push-ups throughout your life. The point is that people who did these Soleus push-ups experienced dramatic improvements in blood sugar regulation and in metabolism, despite the fact that the soleus is just 1% of the total musculature. What they saw was a large magnitude, for example, 52% less postprandial, that's after a meal, glucose excursion. So 52% less increase in blood glucose, and 60% less hyperinsulinemia, so reduced levels of insulin. They also miraculously observed that despite this being, again, a small muscle, 1% of the total muscle mass, so very small oxidative use, they saw big improvements in systemic metabolic regulation. What this means is that if you're somebody who cares about blood glucose regulation, you want to keep your metabolism running, please don't stop exercising the other ways that you exercise. But if you're somebody who wants to maximize your health, doing these Soleus push-ups fairly continuously while seated is going to be beneficial. And in addition to that, I know that there are going to be people out there who, for instance, might be injured, or you're traveling and you're stuck on a plane, or you're in the classroom and you're forced to study all day or take notes all day. You're just not getting enough opportunity to get those steps that you want to take, whether or not it's 10,000 or fewer or more, getting enough steps or movement. Maybe you don't have time to get out and do your run, or maybe you're also running, weightlifting, and doing yoga classes and things of that sort, but you want to further improve your fitness, at least in terms of your metabolic health. This seems like a terrific, very low investment way to do it, certainly zero cost. It does take a little bit of attention, so you have to divert your attention from other things you're doing to make sure that you're still doing these Soleus push-ups. 270 minutes, 4.5 hours of doing these Soleus push-ups is a lot, but by my read of the data and the rather significant, or I should say very significant, effects that they observed on blood glucose regulation and metabolism, etc., seems to me that doing less would still be beneficial, and that you don't necessarily have to do the full 270 minutes in order to get the benefits that they observed. More about this study includes the fact that the benefits they observed were very long lasting. As long as 2 hours after a meal, they could still see this improved blood glucose utilization. I don't know, because I wasn't able to find it in the methods, whether or not they were doing the Soleus push-ups while they were consuming blood sugar in this study. The point being that if you're somebody who cares about their fitness, this study is interesting, because what it means is that, again, if you are forced to be immobile or sitting longer than you would like, feel stuck in a meeting or Zooms or class or on a plane, etc., or if you're simply trying to add a bit more fitness and metabolic health to your overall regimen, Soleus push-ups, at least to me, seem like a very low investment, simple, zero cost tool to improve your metabolic health.